So in this video, I want to quickly mention a few books that I really love that I feel are underhyped. Books that I think that are really good, that don't get a lot of attention, that I feel deserve more spotlight. All right, and without further ado, let's jump right into it. So for these books, I'm also going to include books that are similar, that I think get more hype or more love, just so that you can have kind of a comparison. And for this first book, it is called Semiosis by Sue Birk. And it has a very similar premise to a different sci-fi series, Children of Time and Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky. In this series, you've got a set of space travelers who are looking to colonize a different planet, and what happens, you end up with giant spiders, giant sentient spiders. And with this book, you definitely have a similar premise in that you have these people who are looking to go colonize a different planet. But in this book, they end up on the wrong planet, and they have to deal with things that they weren't prepared for. And one of the things is actually sentient plant life. So if you read this book and you were interested to see how spiders could evolve and become sentient, then you might be interested in seeing how plant life can do something similar. And this book is just very strange. You get an entire chapter of bamboo from their perspective. It's out there. But I also think this book is just very well written, and it has a very unique structure. It has 7 chapters, and it jumps through the generations of people that are colonizing this planet. The first chapter is written from the people who first land there, and then every subsequent chapter jumps ahead, like 20, 30, 40 years in time. And by the end of the book, you get to the chapter where it's hundreds and hundreds of years after. And I just think that's a really neat way to write a book. This next book is for people who love a good haunted house story, kind of like The Shining by Stephen King, except this is sort of a newer version of that tale. And I actually think this is one of the creepiest books I've ever read, and that would be The Grip of It by Jacques Jemke. This is honestly the creepiest book I've ever read, and not a lot of people know about it or have read it. It's written from the dual perspective of a husband and wife who move into a new house, and obviously it's a haunted house story, so weird stuff happens, but just the way the author writes it and just how strange and just kind of a fever dream this book is, it's very creepy. I also recommend anyone who picks this book up also pick up the audiobook, because the way the book is written, like I said, it's written from the man and woman's perspective, but the chapters are so short and so quick. It's a small book and there's like 100 chapters, so it can be a bit jarring jumping back and forth between. But with the audiobook, you've got the male and female narrator doing the husband and wife, so it's much easier to keep track of. And just the way that they narrate the book adds to the creepiness factor. But like I've said, if you want a really good haunted house story that, you probably haven't read or have heard of, go check this one out. And this next book is for people who are a fan of this one mystery book called Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough, which, if you've read this book, you either loved the ending and how crazy it was, or you hated it and how unpredictable it was. But a lot of people, even who liked the book, don't necessarily even know that the author has another great book called Cross Her Heart, which I think it doesn't have as good an ending as Behind Her Eyes, but I think overall it tells a more compelling story. And it's a mystery thriller book, so it's better to go into it not knowing a lot about it. So I won't go into too much detail. All I will say is that this is definitely a better paced book than Behind Her Eyes. I think it has more compelling characters. The ending is great. It's just not as crazy as Behind Her Eyes. But I feel it's definitely underhyped, because even people who love Behind Her Eyes, I don't necessarily see them talking about this book nearly as much. And this next book is for people who enjoyed the book Behind Closed Doors, which is absolutely one of my favorite thriller books I've ever read. And if you liked this book, loved this book, a book that has somewhat of a similar premise is The Wife Upstairs. This is an outstanding book. And I know that this book is older, but it astounds me how many ratings this has on Goodreads compared to this book. While I understand this is a new book, I want more people to go out and read this because it's fantastic. It's really underhyped. This next book is for people who enjoy Sylvain Neuvel, who is the author of my favorite trilogy of all time, The Themis Files. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because not a lot of people are even aware that he has started a brand new trilogy, and the very first book is A History of What Comes Next. The things that people really love and enjoy about The Themis Files, it's all here in this book. You've got really cool science, you've got very compelling characters, and it's very fast-paced and short, just like The Themis Files. For anyone who's read The Themis Files, I think this book is so good, and it's really criminally underrated and underhyped. Go read it, please. This next book is a fantasy, and it was a little hard for me to try to find a similar book, but what I'll go with is The Poppy War. This book is very well known for having a very compelling female protagonist in Rin, and I feel like this book, which is one of my favorite fantasy books of all time, 12 Kings and Sherikai, has an equally compelling female character in Cheda. I feel like this book was very hard to try to find a similar fantasy book because this has a sort of unique setting in that it takes place mostly in the desert, and this story basically revolves around Cheda, a very compelling female protagonist who wants and seeks out revenge against the 12 Kings. And not only is it a fantasy with a very unique setting and a very compelling character and a very interesting magic system, it also has elements of horror, which you don't often see in fantasy, but that's another reason why people should give this a chance if they like those elements. This next book is super weird, and I could not for the life of me find a good comparison to make. So I'm just going to talk about it here because I think it's criminally underhyped. Not a lot of people, they don't even know the author for the most part, but definitely this book they don't know about. And it's called Extreme Makeover by Dan Wells. Dan Wells is most famous for his John Cleaver series, and the very first book in that is called I Am Not a Serial Killer. In no way, shape, or form is this series closely in the ballpark to this book, because this book is about a 15-year-old sociopath who's kind of obsessed with serial killers, and this book is about an apocalypse that's set about by cosmetics. What the hell? Like I said, this book is super crazy, super weird, and it's also very funny. It's one of the funniest books I've ever read. Like I said, it's about an apocalypse that's that's caused by cosmetics. This guy, or this group of scientists, they figure out a way to kind of rejuvenate people and so to make them look younger, which is obviously why people want to try to wear makeup in the first place, is to look good. But all hell breaks loose and it just spirals completely out of control with weird genetic mutations, and it's hilarious. And not a lot of people have even heard of this book. So if you're at all interested in what I just said, please go and pick this book up because it's really good. And this next author, I just feel, is criminally underrated and underhyped in general. So I'll just show off a bunch of his books. Ray Bradbury, Ray Bradbury, Ray Bradbury, Ray Bradbury, Ray Bradbury. But in all honesty, I do feel that Ray Bradbury is underhyped because most people have only either read like Fahrenheit 451, maybe they picked up the Martian Chronicles, maybe they read Something Wicked This Way Comes, but most of his books are short story collections, and some people don't even like short story collections, but he's so good. He's my fourth favorite author, just behind Martin, King, and Sanderson. He's so good. Please pick up one of his books. Anyway, what did you guys think of this video? Have you read any of these books that I mentioned? Did you like them? Did you hate them? Did you think they were meh? What are some of your underhyped books? Books that you feel need more attention and that you think more people should read and pick up? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.